Hello, everybody, and welcome to your live stream here at the Premier Injuries channel. Today, we're talking all about the latest injury news before the Game Week 25 deadline. Now, before we get started, as always, just wanted to point you to the Premier Injuries website. You can check out any of the injury news that we're talking about. Very easy. Got all the teams up here, and if you've got any questions, consult there first, but then you can also head onto Twitter. You can message us, or you can message us through YouTube as well. We'll try and answer them before the deadline. But yeah, how are you doing today, Ben?
All good, JJ. Carabao Cup Final on the horizon. Trophy in the cabinet. Fingers crossed.
Confident?
Um, am I confident? Nah, I'm not confident. We've suffered a little bit of a downturn in form. I mean, we're going to welcome back Bruno Guimaraes, which is a massive boost for us. I just think we need to get back on that goal trail. The concerns and the worries are the form of Rashford, although that knock against Barcelona, hopefully won't, keep him out too long, but keep him out for Sunday would be great. And Bruno, I think you keep those two quiet, and I don't really see much threat from elsewhere. So, it's a tight game. I think there might only be one goal in it. Hopefully for us. Hopefully for the Black and Whites.
Yeah.
The real United.
Yes. I mean, the thing is, as well, is, looking at it from my perspective, it's like the best defence coming up against probably the best attack at the moment in the league. So it'll be very interesting to see who wins out. And obviously, I'll be supporting the Toon, of course. But yeah, as you alluded to there's a few bits of injury news. Obviously, Rashford won't affect FPL Gameweek 25, but there's lots of news here. And so, just as always, we head over to your predicted lineups on the hub as well. So if anybody wants to check that out, you can head over to the hub as well. We've got FPL Kino, and he says, "Good afternoon from South Africa." Again, we're going global, Ben. This is
Global.
very exciting.
Fantastic. Good
Yeah.
afternoon.
And
Thanks for joining.
yeah, and as well, just before we get onto it as well, you and I have done quite a few little shorts, haven't we, this week on YouTube? You've done one on Chelsea, why they need to be avoided. And then I've done one, which is probably very inflammatory, was why you shouldn't captain Mo Salah this game week. And you should go for Bukayo Saka as well. And also, we've made a TikTok, people. So yes, we've got a couple of questions here, but we're going to start off quickly with Bournemouth. Ben, what is the news?
Yeah, we just heard from Gary O'Neill. Caveat for those watching the stream for the first time, we have that glut of press conferences between 1 and 2. So this is a working document. These predicted lineups aren't set in stone, and Bournemouth are one of those teams which will be updated. I did gamble ahead of the press conference that Marcus Tavernier would miss out due to that hamstring problem. Of course, he scored in his first start since recovering from that previous hamstring issue. Indeed, Gary O'Neill confirms that he is out, but following that win at Wolves, I'm putting that one as the only change in bringing Anthony back into that Cherries lineup.
Exciting. And just, again, adding to the excitement, I don't want to take away too much from obviously the news here, because I think that's what a lot of people are interested in. But we've got somebody, FPL Popo from Swaziland. We've got Andy something from Brisbane. And we've got Carl from Mauritius. It really is.
Absolutely loving that, by the way.
Yeah. Just welcome everybody. It's very exciting.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah, as I put in the comments as well, just let us know where we're all from. We love, hearing and imagining these places as well, because England is quite cold at the moment, and so I can imagine Brisbane is a lot nicer weather at the moment. But we do have a question from Slavcho, who has said he is from Bulgaria. He said, please give us an extra free hit, Chip. It is getting quite complicated at the moment, but he wanted to know our thoughts on Man United challenging for the title. Do you think they are real title challengers, Ben?
I still think it's City's, in all honesty. I think it may come down to that little bit of experience, that little bit of quality. Look, Eddie Nketiah has done a great job for Arsenal. Saka Odegaard been fantastic. I just think they miss Gabriel Jesus. If he was to come back and really hit the ground running, I can see them pushing City all of the way. But like I say, that little bit of quality. And as for United, look, it's been a great run of form. Can't argue with that. Outside of Bruno, Rashford, I'm not, Casemiro, yes. I'm not really seeing a great deal within that United team. Luke Shaw, maybe. I'm not a big fan, but you can't deny that his performances post World Cup have been fairly decent. So I just think that they're one or two injuries away potentially of from slipping out of that race. But look, great run, credit where it's due. I think they'll probably just fall a little bit short in the end.
Yeah, I think the thing with Man United is they've really come on in the second half of the season. One of the things that I'm kind of maybe tempering talking about their involvement in the league title is the fact that they have had a really nice run. People will obviously point to the win against Man City. That was a close one because there was the Rashford goal or the Fernandes goal where it was clearly offside. That kind of changed the psychology of the match. Little moments like that can really change, the whole situation for Man United. If they lose that match and they've lost to Arsenal, do they lose a bit of confidence in those games? But they go into those games having won against Manchester City, and suddenly, we'll see how it goes. But let's turn our attention back to the team news. Now, Arsenal, a lot of people are excited because they've got a double game week as well. But is there any injury news updates that people need to be aware of?
But just in terms of the updates, Thomas Partey, we know that he's missed the last two. He's hoping to be involved with the squad today. He's took part in aspects of training up until this point. If he comes through that session without any kind of reactions, then I do expect him to be included in the matchday squad. However, I would fully, I think Jorginho's got that place nailed down just in terms of his overall fitness. Gabriel Jesus is the other main talking point. We know Moelney's out for the season. He is progressing nicely. He's still working outside on the pitch, but that's more of an individually based program. So his return is not imminent. As we've seen with Arteta, there's potentially a few sort of places up for grabs here. And it really just depends on how he wants to work with this. We see Ben White swap with maybe Tomiyasu. We see Trossard with Martinelli. And then, Partey could potentially come in for that second game, maybe.
And just to remind people, loving the questions and everything, but we will go through the teams alphabetically just to answer that. And in terms of the Partey question, I think Jorginho's done a good job as well. He's done a lot of creative passing from that deep role. And we haven't looked too kind of weak with him. I think a lot of people are kind of almost eating their words in being negative about him. And just quickly, I'm going to run through these quickly. We've got somebody from Bulgaria, we've got somebody from Wirral, we've got somebody from Beijing, we've got somebody from Wexford Island, South Africa, Nigeria, Thailand, and then let's have a look. Oh, somebody as well has said Fuzzy Warbles checking in, Ben.
Oh yeah, so US based Fuzz. All right, yeah. He's a long standing competitor in my Fan Tracks league. I have to doff my hat to the guy. He knows his stuff when it comes to fantasy related sports. So nice to see you.
But maybe not so nice so that he catches up on you.
It's the other way around. It's always vice versa. I'm always on his coattails.
Oh, dear. Right, Aston Villa are up next. And there's been a little bit of interest in the likes of Watkins. But is there any positive news for the Villains?
In terms of their fitness updates, there was nothing from Unai Emery. They spoke on Thursday as part of his press conference. And with regards to that starting 11, again, there aren't too many changes potentially due to fitness-related problems. There are discussions around who maybe Unai Emery will start at fullback. We've seen Moreno and Matty Cash start there last weekend, but equally, we've seen Ashley Young and Lucas Digne. So they're a little bit of a nightmare. It's almost this scenario and this situation that we had with Tottenham earlier on in the season, where really it's probably an avoid for me in terms of, who should we go for? Because even if they do start, the likelihood is that they may be restricted in terms of their minutes.
And the other thing as well is, people might be looking at a good run of games and things like that. But thus far, I was really excited about Unai Emery. I'm not going to lie. I was thinking, he's somebody with a proven track record, especially with smaller clubs, making them overperform. And the data shows that there's not much improvement thus far. So what is the point for investing in there as well? Now, we're skipping past Brentford and Brighton because the two of them have no game this week. But we go to Chelsea, and just reminding people again, you put out a fantastic short kind of explaining why you need to avoid Chelsea at the moment. Actually, before we get to Chelsea, we've got Jar who's saying, or Yaya saying, would Leon Bailey start? Could we see him starting?
Possibly. The concerns or the worries here are that Umar Emery's already expressed maybe this concerns with regards to Leon Bailey's best position. He doesn't quite know where that currently sits in the side, and therefore, I don't think he sees him as a tackler or as a 9, maybe alongside Ollie Watkins, which is why he's maybe went with Buendia. The goal from Philip Coutinho last weekend and a half decent performance while he was on the pitch probably cements his role. Elsewhere, I mean, I don't really see him moving away from John McGinn either. I think probably from the bench would be my sort of best guess, but he needs to maintain a level of consistency in his performance, and that's always been the issue. One week he looks like a world beater, and then the next he couldn't beat an egg.
And his data is not all that inspiring as well. But a whole team whose data is terribly uninspiring is Chelsea. Is there positive injury news? And is this probably, maybe after Man City, the hardest team to predict? Or are they harder than Man City now? Because they've got so many players for so many few positions.
Look, Graham Potter has took over the mantle from Pep Guardiola without question. So there's no team that has rotated more under the stewardship of Graham Potter this campaign, and that goes back to his time at Brighton, and then of course that sort of travelled over to Stamford Bridge. On occasions this season, we've seen Chelsea change 6, 7, and 8 players on one round, and I'm talking game week to game week, Premier League to Premier League, not around domestic cup competition and then Europe. So this is league to league, so it's quite difficult. During the first half of the season, we were looking at approaching nearly 5 changes per game. It has come down a little bit post World Cup, but we're still averaging just over 4 changes. And like you say, with those January additions, that even sort of exacerbates the problems that we're having trying to pick this starting 11. I mean, last week, for example, we've seen Reece James out of the squad, Thiago Silva, Marc Cucurella. Those weren't even included in the matchday squad. Now, apparently, post-match, Graham Potter said that was on the advice of the medical department. They were red flagged as potential sort of injury casualties, so they were removed from that. But you still look at the strength and the depth of that squad, and look, there's quality all over the pitch. It just really defies the performances that they're actually putting out there.
And with Reece James, Chilwell back in the squad, that's probably the best back line that they can have, which is very exciting. And I think that's one of the reasons why Chelsea have not been doing too well, has been just the fact that they've not been able to have those wing backs who are so important to the style of play. But we do have a question here. Over under on James completing 58 minutes. Is it likely that he'll get that clean sheet?
I would say, look, there's so many influencing factors outside of the control of this, coming down to, first and foremost, the performance and how Chelsea are doing. I think, if things are going well and seemingly Chelsea would have 3 points bagged nice and early, then yes, Graham Potter could look to protect those players, particularly the ones of Reece James, given his importance and also the injury problems that he's had. If things are a little bit tighter, and you're needing somebody like Reece James to maybe unlock that door with, one of those, quality runs down the wing and crosses, then, it could go beyond that. he isn't going to be, he's still not 100% in terms of that full match sharpness and fitness. So it's always going to be in the manager's mind, we need to protect him, because the last thing they need, they want is to lose Reece James for another 3-4, or longer on the sidelines.
And this is the thing. Do you think Reece James is at the point now where he has to play games to be able to get that fitness up, rather than maybe a few weeks ago where he's been treated conservatively because of the risk of re-injury?
Look, we talk about the stakeholders and you talk about the pressures and the burden on Graham Potter. Undoubtedly, he's one of the standout players within that Chelsea squad, particularly on that right-hand side. There's nobody really who can do a similar job to himself. So yes, while he maybe isn't 100%, Graham Potter's feeling that pressure, whether he admits it or not. So he may be forced to take in some, maybe one or two risks with regards to those players, in the hope of getting a result, because this is a result-based business. And, regardless of what you're trying to do, it's a here and now that counts. And if they were to lose at the weekend, then, there's some valid arguments there that Potter might be out the door.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation there at the Bridge, because it's a long-term project. We kind of had that with Arteta at Arsenal. There was that terrible run through Christmas time. We got through it, and we're much better for it now. We're challenging for the title. Maybe Chelsea need to give that time to Graham Potter, as bad as it gets. But then, where is the cut-off point of going, right, it's got really, really bad? The players will lose faith. Stakeholders will lose faith. The psychology of the team will be gone. Yes, you can kind of have a reset in pre-season and kind of re-tackle the season next campaign, but is that too little too late? How long can you give a situation, or was Mikel Arteta probably a rare time when actually everybody at the club was kind of behind him because they knew how bad the situation was?
Yeah, I think that the big difference is here, though, is we have a Chelsea ownership, investors that have spent, in excess of, is it £500 million? And, they need to be guaranteeing some kind of maybe European football, or at least, getting results on the pitch. I know it's going to take a little bit of a while for these players to adapt and gel, but they're a lot better than what's being, shown out at the moment on the pitch. And it's a bit of a head scratcher, whether these are Graham Potter signings or not. He's got to play the hands which he's been dealt. And if he isn't getting the results, then he's the fall guy. He's out the door.
Yeah. Let's move it to Crystal Palace. We've got any updates on Wilfried Zaha? I mean, I think that's the most important news for the Eagles, really.
In short, yes, we have. Great news in terms of the fact that he took part in a full session this morning. So that was the Eagles' final session ahead of this weekend. So he's come through that. Whether he'll be involved this weekend remains to be seen. Patrick Vieira will want to assess the winger on Saturday morning, make sure there's no reaction. I suspect that, really a place on the bench is probably best in terms of Zaha, just where we are in terms of that fitness. Maybe a good 15-20 minute run out towards the end of the game, hopefully when things are going well for Palace. So look, he's on the cusp of a return elsewhere. Tyreek Mitchell, he limped off last weekend. That was a combination of fatigue-related cramp and also a knock on the ankle. So he's absolutely fine. He also took part in the session. And also a special mention to Nathan Ferguson. I think he's only played 8 competitive minutes for Palace since joining from West Brom, which I think was maybe 4.5 years ago. He came through 45 minutes for the under-21s on Monday. He's going to have another game for the development side soon, and hopefully, if he can stay fit, he will be pushing to be involved in that first team very soon.
Well, that is positive news, because we've had people message on here before kind of joking about Nathan Ferguson, but it's a pretty awful situation for a young player to find themselves in, and hopefully he can get his career on track. Ken has said he is from Botswana, Ben, so another global name, but he says keep it going from his side, but we're going to go to the Toffees of Everton. And, you know, they're looking a lot more sturdy under, you know, Sean Dyche. But what is the latest there? I mean, has there been any disruptions? And I guess, you know, the focus is on Dominic Calvert-Lewin because they're already limited for goal scoring. They're not very good going forward. And with him out, it's kind of, they've lost pretty much all potency up top.
Yeah, I'm expecting the Toffees to be unchanged, but there's a lot of discussion in and around the squad. We'll start with Dominic Calvert-Lewin. So he isn't quite there. There's nothing definitive in terms of a timeline. And this is something we've discussed. They're looking to maybe leave, you know, nothing unturned in terms of looking at his lifestyle, his sleeping habits, his psychology, anything that can maybe affect, you know, those availability or this, you know, this injury hampered period that he's had over the last maybe 18 or so months. So they're trying to get the bottom of that. With regards to this latest setback, may be involved in some kind of training from next week, but there are no guarantees with that. There are just no guarantees with Dominic full stop at the moment. So, like I say, it's a toss-up really between Neil Maupay and maybe Ellis Sims for that sort of striking role, or maybe Demarai Gray has played there before, but like I say, he hasn't really had those opportunities under Sean Dyche as it currently stands. Elsewhere within the squad, a lot of questions with regards to the fitness of Nathan Patterson. He returned for the under-21s last week, and that potentially could have put him in contention for this week, or certainly in at least one of the doubles. But he picked up a little bit of a knock on that knee, and that's hampered him in training this week. So I would suggest that, again, he's just a little bit short in terms of his fitness. And in midfield, Amadou Onana, that's another knee problem that's being managed. He has a knock. They're aware of it. He's being monitored, but he has trained with the squad all week.
I mean, the latest from Sean Dyche was he's said it wasn't that serious. He didn't say touch and go, though. So would you say that's more positive that he didn't say touch and go?
Is this on Dominic Calvert-Lewin?
Onana, sorry.
Oh, so yeah, no, he's fine. He
Okay.
said he would keep an eye on him, but he has, like I say, he's been training all week. So it's more of he's just a young midfielder coming into the league for the first time. And like I say, it's easy to forget, given his level of performances, and he has done really, really well, that he's still adapting. His fitness, you know, and intensity still isn't where it needs to be for the Premier League. So there are going to be little ailments and knocks and niggles along the way. But like I say, just be aware of those, play through those, train normally, and, you know, everything else will fall into place.
Your friend from Fantrax, was it, has sent in a message saying, Dyche at home, plus that 11 equals 0-0 versus Aston Villa. Put your money in. I wouldn't bet against that. I think that's absolutely a fantastic shout. Fulham are up next, and you know they've been impressive in defence. I think a lot of people are overlooking, you know, how good they have been at the back since the return from the World Cup. I think it's 5 clean sheets, 4 goals conceded. You know, they're looking pretty damn good. But what is the latest with their team news?
Yeah, it was a shock maybe to see Alexander Mitrovic out of the matchday squad last weekend. Complained of a muscle issue while warming up against Forest. That was hamstring related. Managed to complete about 84 minutes, but probably shouldn't have, in all honesty. He tweaked that. There was a little bit of a strain in there. So he still hasn't been training with the squad. Now, of course, Fulham play on Friday night. Had it been a Saturday, Sunday, or even a Monday game this week, then potentially would have been in with a chance. But because, you know, they have that early kickoff, he probably just hasn't got enough load in his legs now. Marco Silva did tweak things around a little bit. I think he went with Jacoba Reed leading the front line last week with Harry Wilson on the right-hand side. I brought Vinicius in to lead the attack and dropped Cordova Reed back in on that right-hand side.
Interesting. So let's move. Peter says he's in Oman. So we're really seeing where...
we need the map of pins, Jason.
Yeah. Maybe next time before we come on air, I'll put a pin.
We'll check them off.
Yeah, that would be absolutely fantastic. Leeds up next, and I've been quite excited with Jota. I think he's looking really good. But is there positive, negative news around the team?
There's no news. Would be the long and the short of it. We heard from Harry Gracia. I think that's what it is. So obviously he hasn't been in the post very long, I think, and his response to team news was, yeah, we have injuries. You probably know more than me, and I don't want to talk about injuries. Right. Thank you very much with that. So this is what we know. Pascal Struijk was picked up that head injury, that concussion at Old Trafford as part of that double header with United. He was training last week, but on the eve of the game complained of what he called fogginess, and straight away was put back into those protocols. Fingers crossed he should be okay. That's because Max Vuba was forced off with a shoulder problem at Goodison. Now, that was an awkward landing during those opening exchanges. He did manage to continue until half-time. Post-match was revealed as a shoulder subluxation, which is a partial dislocation. Now, you can play with these types of injuries dependent on if there's any damage in and around, you know, that ligament. The main thing is you need to stabilize that joint, so you could maybe wear a brace or some kind of support with that. However, I have decided to err on the side of caution following the return of Liam Cooper. So I've put Liam Cooper back in the squad with Vuba out. If he is out, we'll maybe looking at 2 to 3 weeks. Hopefully, fingers crossed. The other big change, you know, Leeds just aren't scoring, so that's why I've got Georgie Naruta up there as opposed to Patrick Bamford.
Interesting indeed. And Javi Gracia is an interesting appointment as well. He's a very pragmatic manager, and he did quite well at Watford. You know, he got them to an FA Cup final, so maybe he'll turn things around, at least in a temporary fashion, just to give them more stability there. Let's have a look at the questions. We got somebody celebrating that Pereira will be on penalties. Let's go. FPL Tipster said, I'm just tuning in now, busy afternoon as usual. Thanks for these useful streams. We're happy to help. FPL Prem Tipster. Leicester are up next. The big news seems to be over Maddison. You've got him in your team at the moment, but is he likely to play this weekend?
I don't really see much change in the situation from game week to game week. James Maddison doesn't really do a lot towards the beginning of the week and then sort of reintegrates and rejoins the rest of the squad, you know, as we approach match day. So this is an ongoing issue. We know it goes all the way back to November, although where the pain presents is slightly different from posterior to the anterior aspect. So look, for me, Maddison's going to be cleared, fingers crossed, and I do expect him to start. I've only got one change in this Foxes lineup. I'm bringing Yuri Tielemans back. I thought he might have made the starting 11 last week after that calf problem, but he didn't. Yes, it was a disappointing result. I think Brendan Rodgers may chalk that one off and look at the two previous results. And that's why I've sort of more or less sticking with that same 11, like I say, with Tielemans being the only change.
Right, we have got Liverpool up next. I think a lot of people are interested in this. We've had a few questions, especially about Klopp saying that there were knocks for some of the players in midweek. Do you think that's going to affect the starting 11? Or is it some people going to come in and out? And I think as well, the other question with this game week is it's a double game week. So are there players that you expect to play both games, you know, most, if not the full 90 on both?
This is going to be a tough lineup to predict this weekend for sure. There will be changes. Liverpool were named the same 11 that had went to Newcastle and got all 3 points, named the same 11 against Real Madrid. So there were going to be changes regardless. Yes, Jurgen Klopp did talk about 1 or 2 knocks that had been picked up by his players. Didn't really disclose anything in terms of the specifics around that, although we know Joe Gomez was one of those ones that limped off at Anfield. That looks to be a straight swap with Joel Matip. Elsewhere within the team, Diego Jota and Roberto Firmino probably aren't there in terms of that fitness and that form post-injury, which is why I've stuck with the same front three. The problems for me and the rest of the team, I think Harvey Elliott has to come in. We rarely see Jordan Henderson playing 3 games in a week, so that's why he's out. I have left Fabinho in because he missed a match recently because of illness, so he doesn't have that accumulative load. But again, it is a 3-match week. potentially 4 if you're looking ahead. So he may not play in both. The left-hand side, look, we could be looking at Oxlade-Chamberlain. Naby Keita has been in and around that starting 11 in recent times. And let's not forget, he seemed to have fell off the radar, but Curtis Jones is another player who, could potentially play in that. Even Carvalho, who did earlier in the season. The back line, I'm going with Trent.
Big news with Tsimikas, though.
Yes, and this is just about me maybe trying to second guess Jurgen Klopp and freshen up that team. So that's why we've got Tsimikas in. Equally on the right hand side, we have seen him throwing the likes of James Milner at right back with Trent on the bench. But as a Trent owner, I just can't see myself taking him out the team. And ultimately, you have to put hand on heart and say that Liverpool are probably out of the Champions League now. It's going to take some doing to overturn a 5-2 deficit at the Bernabeu. So their only realistic chance of qualifying for the Champions League next season is to get there on merit in the league. And, you can't really afford too many slip-ups. So, he has to go strong and probably stick with the nucleus of those, that so-called sort of strong, aspect of his team, which for me has to include Trent.
We've discussed this before kind of off air, but you've said to me a few times that Robertson is one of those players that can play through the so-called like red area. He's got real durability. Why is it now that we're kind of seeing that he's in and out of the squad a little bit?
Look, it just doesn't come down to the individual as well. You've got a big squad to maintain, and you've got somebody like Tsimikas who's on the fringes of that, that starting 11. And these players, you've got to keep the morale. You've got to keep these players high. You've also got to keep them fairly sharp because you never know when there's an injury or a suspension comes around, and so you want those players to come in who have at least had minutes in recent times and can obviously seamlessly transition into the intensity of the Premier League. So I just think it's good opportunity. It's maybe sensible management, and it's probably the right thing to do. So whether it's this weekend or midweek, I certainly do see Tsimikas getting some decent minutes under his belt.
And okay, so if you had to choose 3 for this game week, a lot of people are tripling up on Liverpool assets. Who would be your 3?
Me 3. Well, I have to go safe. I'll go Alisson, Salah, and
Trent. He's in your team.
He is in my team. Maybe Van Dijk would be a safer option in terms of minutes, just because of, particularly if we've got Gomez sidelined, Ibrahima Konate, he's only had 2 sessions under his belt. So, like I say, there are players who could come in on that right-hand side in that centre-back space, then, you're a little bit more limited. So probably Van Dijk, although I wouldn't necessarily want to be doubling up with Alisson on that Liverpool defence, given how they performed in the Champions League.
Marius has sent in a message. No way, Alisson. Come on, Ben. You could do better. But you're just looking at it from an injury perspective of assured starters. In terms of maybe my 3, I've got them in. So I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I've got Trent, I've got Robertson, and I've gone with Cody Gakpo instead of Salah, Nunez, all of them, just because, Salah, he's a bit of an effort to get in, chopping and changing, finding that extra bit of money from the Fernandes to boost him up. It's a bit of an effort, and so I'd rather, you got a bit of a wry smile there. You're going to tell me why that's a bad idea in a minute, but I'd rather just take Gakpo with that bit of risk rather than going fully into Salah. But tell me why that's a terrible decision, Ben.
No, I cannot argue with it, Jason. Like you say, with Salah, he comes with a premium price tag, and he hasn't got the form that comes along. I mean, I'm on Nunez, and for the same reason you're on Gakpo, really, I don't expect either to play 90 minutes in both games. I hope, fingers crossed, that they'll get starts. But with Roberto Firmino and Diego Jota, pushing hard, and Jurgen Klopp wanting to get them back up to speed, they will certainly play a part.
That's a good segue on to the next point. We've got quite a few questions about Diego Jota's kind of involvement this game week. So we've got will Jota start? This is a question. And if you have to choose between Darwin Núñez and Jota, who would you pick? So yeah, Ben, what is that situation going to be like?
Look, Jota's not coming just off the back of this last injury, which was a calf problem, but this goes all the way back to June, where he suffered that hamstring-related problem in the Nations League, I think was for Portugal. So he's had a heavily disrupted sort of 8 or 9 months. So it's going to take him a while to get back up to speed, but also find that form. And this is something that Jurgen Klopp alluded to today in his press conference. So for me, Núñez, he's coming off the back of goals in consecutive matches. Look, it was bittersweet. He obviously scored against Newcastle, but I had him in my team, so I'll take that. Considering we're in a Carabao Cup final, if you didn't know. So I think on form and the fact that he's scored twice, I think he starts. Certainly the first game, Diego Jota off the bench. And then, like I say, after that, we're going into unknown territory. Performances, goals, knocks, niggles, suspensions, all of those could come into consideration. So, but it would definitely be Núñez over Jota this weekend.
Now, people are asking you, and I guess me as well, quick question, Salah or Saka for captaincy? Now, people need to check my video out. I said do not captain Salah because I'm going for Saka, but would you do something different, Ben?
If I had Salah, then I would, I would be leaning towards Salah for the armband. Certainly not somebody that I'd be looking to bring in. He wouldn't even come in the radar, like I say, given his price point, given the fact that it would take a lot of manoeuvring within the squad and cause too much disruption. I do like the Liverpool fixtures, although equally, I think Arsenal are quite capable of going out there and getting to excellent results. And Saka has been, the main man for Arsenal this season. Spot kick duties, involved in some of the dead balls. So I don't think there's much between in terms of value and an outlay. Saka gets the nod if you're looking to bring somebody in. But if I had Salah already, then he would get the armband.
Let's turn our attention then to Manchester City. We do have a question actually from somebody. Let's have a look, see if I can find it. It was KDB to Salah or Shaw to Tarkowski. So if you can do the KDB to Salah, that's probably a sensible one, isn't it? Because there's a double game week here. Whereas Tarkowski, Shaw, maybe it's not as exciting, is it? Probably go for the more exciting option. As much as I'm not too settled on Salah doing well this game week, I think he could be more exciting than Tarkowski, even though I think Tarkowski's a great option. I think going forward, long term, probably Tarkowski should be somebody in your team. 4.3, lots of potential on set pieces, and I think Everton are going to get quite a few clean sheets under Sean Dyche. But yeah, attention on Manchester City. Again, with the kind of Champions League game, a lot of players in the team played 90 minutes. Is there any chance that we could see, some of the big hitters rested?
Again, this is difficult because I think City only made one change through the week and maybe one change last weekend as well. So, Pep is maybe he's tucked his roulette table away to one side for the moment, and he's quite happy and settled with how he sees his team. We've seen this unusual, this unconventional setup in recent games. It's something that he tinkered through with during that World Cup break. And that brought about the departure of João Cancelo, ultimately because of his lack of game time. And even midweek, we saw Kyle Walker playing in a much more advanced role against Leipzig. But look, always the issues that we have with Manchester City. There's so much strength and depth within that squad. What we do know, I think Aymeric Laporte is probably going to miss out. That was an illness that he started feeling the effects of on Tuesday. So there hasn't, been a great deal of time. So he's a little bit under the weather. I don't see him being involved. And of course, John Stones is recovering from his 5th time loss hamstring injury of the season. KDB, I do have him starting, but he is flagged as a slight doubt. Again, illness, but that illness came on post Nottingham Forest. So, that was a good sort of 5 days away, and hopefully he can come through the session without any issues. If there are, then maybe Phil Foden comes into this start 11. So this could be one potentially that I may look to change as we approach deadline.
Phil Foden. We've got Daniel saying, I'm pretty sure Phil Foden will start. There was a time when people kept messaging you about Phil Foden. Will he start? Will he start? It's hard to say, isn't it? Adrian has asked, KDB to Salah for a -4. Would you take the hit, Ben?
No.
Okay. Trent to Tarkowski for a -4. Would you take the hit, Ben?
Trent? No.
That one disgusted you. You're like, what?
No, I'm not doing that one now.
So Man United and Newcastle don't have a game this week, Ben. What's the reason for that?
Holiday, mid-season break.
Nottingham Forest up next. I'm not in the team again. I mean, can you have a word with the manager over this? But is there any updates about the team? And just before we start, actually, thank you so much, Nottingham Forest, doing Arsenal. Absolute solid. They're the best team in the league.
Yeah, Mr. McKenna, you're going to be out for quite a while yet. Probably another month, unfortunately. So, make the most of that. The only real talking point, few questions. Serge Aurier was attracting a little bit of interest. Earlier in the week, he reported that it was more muscle fatigue around his calf. Probably keep him out for 10 to 15 days. Up steps Steve Cooper, and he said, no, that's not the case. It's going to be a lot longer than that. We're maybe looking towards a month. However, the caveat, Steve Cooper does have previous here. We've heard from him on a Friday before, incidentally ahead of the Leeds game, ruled Morgan Gibbs-White out, said that it wasn't a short-term injury. Lo and behold, he named him in the starting 11 on the 2 days later. So take that with a pinch of salt. Serge Aurier is definitely out of this one, but we're maybe looking at somewhere between 2 and possibly 4 weeks.
Just to clarify, Ben, I apologise to Nigel here. He meant Trent or Tarkowski. So who would you choose?
You know what? I would take a gamble or a punt. I would on Tarkowski. Yeah. I just think minutes tips the scales in his favour.
Interesting thing as well. So Igshem, I hope I haven't butchered your name there. He says, I can't believe you guys aren't bringing in Salah. There's quite a few reasons for that, as we've kind of explained as well. But also, Ben especially likes to play the differential game. But recently, I've been dabbling with differential options, differential captaincies. I've gone with like Saka, Rashford, Saka or something in recent game weeks, and it's done well, performed over Haaland as well. So just kind of looking for those little marginal gains that we can make over our opponents in terms of fun moves, because following the template isn't always as fun, is it, Ben? But let's have a look. Southampton up next. Not many people interested in them. We always say that. But what is the latest news there?
Generally, I think only 2 long-term injuries. Tino Livramento still working his way back from ACL. Juan Larios is back on the training pitches, but too soon. Stuart Armstrong, have him out of the start 11 from the team that won at Stamford Bridge last weekend for Theo Walcott. That was based on a muscle issue for the Scotland international. However, I may flip-flop back to Stuart Armstrong on that if anybody is interested. A couple of questions with regards to Shea Adams. He is out. He's still on the sidelines, so that's why I don't have him in the squad. But elsewhere, like I say, I don't really think many people are too interested.
And Marius has said, with Che Adams out, could he be back for double game week 27?
Depends on the performances of Southampton. If you're talking just in terms of purely being fit and available, very much so, yes. But ultimately, what you need to know, pushing for a start and to be involved, if Southampton can replicate their win of last weekend, then I don't see, Ruben Seles, I think it is, tinkering with his team too much. You don't want to be messing on with a winning formula. So let's see how it goes. And Ananachu and Suleimana, if they bang, then, Shea Adams might have to wait a little bit of time to regain that place in the team.
Spurs up next. They're hosting Chelsea, which I think gives them the advantage in this derby. But is there injury news that people need to be aware of?
Nothing new in terms of the injury. So you have those 4 long-term absentees, a couple of maybe discussion points. Last week I had Pape Sarr over Skip. Of course, Stellini or Conte, whatever way you want to spin it, went with Skip, and it probably turned out to be the right decision in the end. Emerson over Porro. I don't really see Emerson, giving up that spot anytime soon. And we have Richarlison back in. Of course, it was Heung-min Son that missed out from the beginning last week, but he made an impact from the bench. So I've decided to go with Kulusevski as being the odd man out this weekend.
Interesting, especially in terms of creativity. Will that mean Kane kind of drops a little bit deeper so that those two can play 2 up top and him maybe slightly deeper role to create? Because where's the creativity in the team? Perisic and Kane are probably the main architects there, but that's the Tottenham problem of playing the Conte style. They don't really have that ability to create chances, and we'll see what they do. But up next, West Ham. What is the news there, Ben?
I've went with Danny Ings. Can't believe he didn't start Danny Ings last week. West Ham struggling in front of goal. Mikel Antonio, he's a battering ram. He works very hard, strong, holds up play. But ultimately it comes down to, putting the ball in the back of the net. So Danny Ings surely starts this week. I brought Ben Rama back in. I think Downs was preferred ahead of him. The only other major sort of injury talking point is Kurt Zouma. He is back on the training pitches. Maybe he's a little bit short in terms of his fitness to force his way into that 11, but shouldn't be too far away. And also Maxwell Cornet. This is a calf problem that's went back, I think maybe September or early October. He's been back and forth to France, but he is training with the squad. However, David Moyes says he will need a good few weeks of training to put himself in a real sort of contention in terms of that sharpness.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see if West Ham can start scoring the goals because, XG-wise, they're massively underperforming. Danny Ings is so good in front of goal that maybe he might be the man to rectify their season. But finally, Wolves, again, they might be interested because they got a double game week this game week. Is that correct, actually? Yeah. Yes, they're one of the teams that double with Arsenal, Everton and Liverpool. But yeah, what is the injury situation there? Is there anything to disrupt the team?
Not massive amounts. It's pretty much as you were. Mario Lemina should come back into that starting 11 after serving a 1-match ban. Of course, there was a lot of controversy over that second yellow he received back in game week 23. Whether it was for the third person to speak to a referee or aggressively running at the referee, we're not too sure. Adama Traore was starting on the right-hand side, was probably one of the best performers last weekend, although it doesn't really say much. It was a really bad game. And I've also thrown Diego Costa back into the attack. Like I say, Wolves just need somebody to put the ball in the back of the net. Costa isn't the player that he once was. probably won't be able to complete 90 minutes, but he's a threat, you know, and he's probably one of the better options. Maybe him or Podence, maybe or Kuna could maybe play in that advanced role. But like I say, we'll start with Costa and see what happens from that point.
Well, that is all the injury news for everybody. We hope that it has been useful and that you have a good game week, everybody. But we're going to wish you the best of luck and the best of health. Okay, before we go, to be fair, FPL Anime asked us a little while ago. He said, will Cresswell start or is Emerson going to keep up?
I just think this change in formation with David Moyes suits Emerson. He's played himself into the team. He is carrying a little bit of form. Moyes is referenced that. I think it's been one mistake too many from Aaron Cresswell. So for now, certainly, it looks as if Emerson, that place on the left-hand side is his to lose.
Right, let's wrap it up there then. Wishing everybody the best of luck. We'll be back again, same time next week. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. You can always check out through the week as well. We produce lots of little shorts,